Welcome to the third session of the third model of the SaferAfrica e-learning program. This model is about road safety management, and my name is Ludo Kluppels, working at the VS Institute in Brussels, Belgium. I will lead you through this third session about planning actions. Before you start this model, you have already learned a lot of things about the basic concept of road safety that was discussed in Model 1, about data collection, what was discussed in Model 2, and you have already seen two sessions of this third model, namely what about a lead agency, how to develop a road safety strategy, and now we are going to the third session of this model about planning actions. Afterwards, you can also visit the fourth session about funding. In this session on road safety management with planning the actions, we will present the system as proposed by Wegman for Europe in 2001 and by Bliss and Breen in 2005 on a more international level. Further, we will indicate some key domains of interventions, planning and design, entry of vehicles and users, the recovery of crash victims. The third part of this session will give an example of a procedure to plan interventions. Prioritizing interventions will be a part of the session on funding, which is the last session on the model on the road safety management. The World Bank and the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, recommend a management system that has three levels. The first is the institutional management functions which produce the second level, namely interventions, and that on itself will lead to results. The magic word in all this system is result focus. This was already discussed in the previous sessions on management. It means that interventions and actions has to be monitored and evaluated on specific targets, numeric or qualitative, and that for each interventions, key performance indicator, mostly written as KPIs, has to be defined. Interventions addresses the safe planning, the design and the use of the road network, and the condition in which vehicles and road users can enter that network. These interventions set specific standards and rules for safety and aim to secure compliance with these rules and regulations. Planning, design, operations, and the use of the road network is a first category of interventions that has to be organized. A set of standards on how roads has to be constructed and on how they have to be maintained has to be developed. One of the problems in a lot of African countries is not that they don't have rules and standards, but first of all, that some of these rules and standards are not really adapted to the local situation. They've just copied the text of their former colonizers or international organizations. Secondly, rules are set, but there is no effort or only a limited effort to inform all the involved persons or organizations and agencies who has to apply these rules and regulations. And even that is done, there is no monitoring on the compliance with these rules or standards. In general, road builders and engineers are well concerned with the technical aspects of roads, but are not always thinking of taking care of the safe system principles. It's a duty of the government to stipulate in detail their approach and to check if in design and during the building stage these directives have been followed. A second package of initiatives concern the conditions of entry and exit on the road system. Vehicles have to be safe, not only for the drivers and the passengers, but also for other road users. For different kinds of vehicles, different directives or standards has to be developed. In fact, the UNECE, United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, has developed safety standards for motorized vehicles. Crash tests can give credits to vehicles to give an indication of their safety. In African countries, a lot of second-hand vehicles were important, as well as new vehicles from countries or suppliers who don't apply these safety standards. Import and trade controls has to be established to guarantee a minimum of compliance with these standards. A periodic technical control is also a necessity. Special attention is made for power two-wheelers. For example, the little Chinese KTM motorbike, which are called Jakarta in Mali, which probably is a corruption of the word Laharata in Bamebari, which is the local language, and what originally means the path to the death. For all users, laws on gaining a permit to drive with a motorized vehicle can assure that the driver knows the rules and has the necessary competences to use his vehicle in a safe way. A concrete set of behavior rules for every road users, also cyclists and pedestrians, must be promoted. Crucial on this matter are the efforts of informing people by education, for example in schools, by campaigning, and the efforts of the police forces by enforcing, controlling and reacting in a proper way to people who don't comply to these rules or regulations. The third package of interventions consists of rules and standards on the delivery of appropriate emergency medical and rehabilitation services. It's all about the reduction of the severity of injury consequences once a crash has happened. It's a whole chain of direct care by bystanders or police officers present at the scene to transport to a well-equipped emergency room and the hospital for further care. It concerns not only the immediate care, but also the follow-up to alleviate pain and distress, to reintegrate victims into work and family life and also in traffic. The effectiveness of a chain depends on the strength of each of its links. The Ministry of Healthcare is probably the most important governmental department that has to take this in hands. But if there are also private organizations involved, ambulance services or for example, then also other regulations and controlling departments have to do their job. Talking about all these interventions, let's see a little bit what's happening in your country. So take a little time to think about these questions. Do you have an idea in which degree your country is fulfilling these different kind of tasks? In which category you see a good improvement? Can you give some example? And in which category your country has to invest much more? Take your time to reflect on these questions and then restart the video. Developing a concrete plan to improve road safety demands, as a first step, a good analysis of the situation. This analysis includes an identification of all the issues that are linked with this problem and the detection of aspects that can be and has to be improved or changed to solve or minimize the problem. Based on this analysis, a search process will start to gain a maximum of ideas on interventions that can attack the different aspects that deteriorate the actual situation. A plan will explain which approaches are going to put in practice, who is going to handle, and over which period of time, and what could be the expected result. The most crucial step is probably the implementation of the plan and the follow-up. Let's find out how this is going to work for road safety. Crash data are very important for developing a good strategy. A first analysis of these data could probably identify the most important road safety issues. This could be a specific road user group, a specific location or a period, specific kind of accidents. Even with the data collection system is not 100% reliable and only partial data are available, a first choice can be made in this phase of the process. Although data on crashes are fundamental, also other sources are important. Media reports reflect also part of reality and can influence the public opinion. But also politicians who at the end of the process has to provide resources and their agreement on interventions have to say something about that. Also public discussions and ideas from representative persons of public figures can be taken as a starting point. But in all these cases, data must be verified or collected to make good analysis of the situation and to frame the suggestions. Let's take an example of Burkina Faso. A few organizations, especially the emergency services, warned for the risk of riding without a helmet and referred to the many brain injuries that were confronted with. The first step is a confirmation of this issue in the crash data. Crash data were obtained from different sources: the police, the gendarmerie, la Brigade Nationale des Sapeurs-Pompiers, the fire brigade, and each of them have their own region in which they collect data on road accidents. In 2006, for example, the police force of Ouagadougou noted 2,433 incidents with power two-wheelers, 51 concerning a power two-wheeler and a car, and 33 were between minimum two power two-wheels. From all the accidents the gendarmerie has handled, in 1/3 of them a power two-wheeler was involved. The statistics of the fire brigade gave no details on the kind of vehicle involved. Also, hospital statistics gave no information on the vehicle of the injured people, but it was clear that 1/3 of all injuries were brain injuries. Although the statistics are not complete, it's clear that a lot of power two-wheelers are involved in accident and that brain damage is an important issue. By number, but of course also by its consequences. So we have some data now. And then we're going to analyze the situation, and that could be done in different steps. You can go further investigate on causes and factors. You can inspect the infrastructure, the region, the place where the accidents happen, and see if there's a link with certain areas of certain roads. You can observe a traffic flow and traffic behavior of people, measuring the behavior of people and the road users. You can look in the literature to see what other countries, institutes have already about a specific problem. You can organize a survey on what road users think of this issue and why they behave as they do, etc., etc., etc. Some examples. In Kenya, a study was held on the risk factor of power two-wheelers. And in Uganda, a link was made between the severity of head injuries and the use of helmets. In Burkina Faso, power two-wheelers riders were asked if they wear a helmet and why they use it or why they don't use it. Results of this survey will be discussed in Module 4 on Session 3 and what's happening on education. Such survey on people's beliefs is a good starting point to develop a campaign, for example. But please don't be confused on this aspect. Try to put the problem in the framework of the SAFE system. One of the possibilities to do this is making use of the hidden matrix. The hidden matrix starts with the three basic factors of road safety: user, vehicle, environment. It looks for solutions, measures, regulations for the defined problem. The problem is here not people don't wear helmets. The problem is that power two-wheelers have too many serious accidents, mostly head injuries. What could help to decrease the number to avoid severe accidents of power two-wheelers? Hidden indicates also three levels. Could we take measures before the accidents occur so that we probably can prevent people having accidents? Could we take initiatives so that the damage or the severity of the accident could be minimized? And could we take measures so that there would be a good care after the accident so that secondary damage or injuries should be avoided? By trying to fill in the different rows and columns, a lot more possibilities are created and the consistency between different elements comes clear. Of course, not always all the boxes can be filled in, but with a little creativity and thinking out of the box, you can reach a lot of different kinds of actions and initiatives. When we have the results of our analysis of the problems, and we have also an overview of possible measures and initiatives that could be taken to solve the problem, for example, based on the hidden matrix, we have to develop a plan. And a plan must describe in detail the concrete results to be achieved, based on data, for example. Decrease here in this example, it decrease the number of power two-wheelers with 30% in the next 2 years, for example. There must be also intermediate objective need to reach the final objective. For example, increase the helmet wearing with 50%, increase control efforts on helmet wearing. Every 2 weeks a massive control action will be taking place in a random choice part of the city. What will do, who will do what, in which time perspective? What are the resources and who is providing them? Planning the intermediate evaluations, and a lot of other things has to be done in the plan. Be aware that in the plan there is a chapter on education, campaigning, street events, courses, demonstrations, to make people aware of the problem and to give the right information and to motivate them to comply with the rules. Engineering is also a possibility, which is not always present or obvious, but sometimes more effective. For the problem of power two-wheelers, you could think of speed limitations on the motorcycle, or something completely different to provide the necessary equipment for each ambulance to deal with head injuries. Enforcement is probably not the most sympathetic action, but be sure that without a proper control system, humans behave as they used to do and not as they have to do. You don't have to invent everything on your own. All over the world, people are struggling with the same problems in traffic, and many different approaches have been tried out. Not always a good planned action will lead to the expected results. And a lot of ideas and good practices are available on websites and in manuals. This slide gives a selection based on praise, for example. You can stop the video and take a screenshot or two to do some research afterwards. And of course, also on the Safer African website, you will find descriptions of several good practices and their transferability to low and middle income countries. Indeed, the transferability of practices is an important issue. The same action or intervention can give positive results in one specific country, but can have a lot of negative side effects in another country. People are very creative and make their own interpretations of regulations and infrastructural interventions. For example, we see in a lot of African countries that the government has invested to hard shoulders for the safety of pedestrians, but they were not used by pedestrians because local people will install their stalls for selling goods to travelers, which could decrease the safety of that road. Some interventions should be very effective on one aspect of traffic, like speed bumps, that could have a positive impact on severity of accidents, but could also have at the same time a negative effect on noise and air pollution. Some examples of questions that needs to be answered will be presented here. Ogden in 1996 and the Bureau of Infrastructure, Transport and Regional Economics of Austria in 2012 has specified such questions for infrastructural interventions. Interventions on one area could have a negative on the other area. People look always for other solutions when there is more speed control on certain roads. Improve the state of roads by better maintenance, the speed could also increase, and roads became more dangerous for vulnerable road users. Installing roundabouts is generally a positive intervention, but they must be placed well so that they are not too small for trucks or other large vehicles, on the right place so that the side streets still have access on the main road, with taking into account bicycles. Often roundabouts are more dangerous for cyclists, and it must be clear that road users know how to use them. Turner and Smith conducted a workshop to identify issues around the implementation of infrastructure treatments in low and middle income classes. The conclusions are available in the report we mentioned here below. So this was a very short session about interventions, but we have to think about several high points. First of all, there are three domains in which road safety strategy of a country has to develop initiative. It's about designing and planning the road network. It's about who is entering in that road network system, the vehicles, the road users, what are their standards, what are their regulations. And of course, how do we recover injuries? Adapt standards demands compliance, and compliance demands control. Planning interventions must be based on a good analysis of all aspects, and adapt even the best practices of other countries to your own reality. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope to see you again in the last session on the road safety management.